Good day, everybody. I have Yolelwa Sikunyana here. That's what my mom would say when she talks about lawyers. But also, on the other hand, an entrepreneur who actually not only is about the law and the interpretation thereof, but about growing businesses. And it's my belief that today our discussion is going to be helpful to those who want to understand how to deal with the crisis that we are in now under COVID-19, and also in our sort of connecting with the government, communicating with government, and using government information to make decisions in our businesses. So over to you to say more about what you do so that we can get on with our conversation.
Okay, brilliant stuff. So my passion, of course, is around the law and how we could navigate our lives and any other roles in the universe, incorporating the law, because I don't believe that we should live in a country or in the world that doesn't have rules and regulations. Whilst
Yes.
those rules could be unfair to some could interpret them as limiting, some could interpret them as very rigorous in their lives. But in essence, for me, it is important to live around rules, principles, things that are understood, why we have to behave in a certain way to preserve other people's interests, not only our interests. Yeah, so which brought us to this conversation then with you, Coach, to say, what can we do during this period? I mean, if we've got leaders, and particularly our president is leading during this period, how does he communicate what we need to do, how we need to do it, where?
Yes. So as a person who understands the law and the structures, because with me, I'm just a simple coach. I get my power from my clients. So I get to talk about epidemiology, virology, medicine, public health, leading in banks, mining, and all of these things, science, hard sciences and soft sciences with ease because of the clients like you that I work with. So I look like and sound like and walk like as if I know everything, but I know nothing. I actually depend on people like you to actually make me to look brilliant. Isn't it? It's the easiest job.
That's rich, Coach.
So the first question I would like us to sort of discuss around is just the understanding of governance from a government point of view. We have got parliament, we've got the cabinet, we've got the command council. Just briefly, to a layman, how do these three things work together?
Well, the underlying foundation for every rule in this country or every law is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So that's the supreme law, so to speak. So anything that is made by government or is decided for by government will emanate from the Constitution directly. So, however, as citizens, we understand the Constitution to be the supreme law, and we think because it is the supreme law, we can rely directly on it. However, there are other circumstances that requires us to rely to the enabling legislation, being in this particular instance, the Disaster Management Act. So, and the general law, the general application of the law, you don't need to rely directly on the Constitution. So the Constitution is an enabler to say, make laws that are in line with the Bill of Rights. That is how we have got here, is that what is happening, the government has triggered the provisions of the Disaster Management Act, and as such, they've constituted a command council. And this command council is composed of the president and the ministers. And they make decisions empowered by that act. And of course, there will be overlapping issues around constitutional rights, because mostly we have to understand that Section 36 of the Constitution limits our rights, and government has to balance these rights. It's their responsibility to balance these rights. So that's what is happening.
Yeah, and the most important thing that I am actually picking up from what is going on is that we are all learning. We've never been in this situation before. It's the first time in a democratic society or South Africa that government has to exercise these kind of powers. And what does it mean for mistakes, for precision, and all of those things? So what is your view when it comes to these mistakes, and what is expected? How do we balance obligations and rights?
So for me, the issue is that you are correct. You're saying that it's the first time. So it's the first time for everyone. But in this society, we then expect government to step up, because everyone who's employed by the cabinet, I mean, who's part of the cabinet, should be able to do their job, and should be able to foresee that if this happens, how will we react? So it's obvious then to me that because it's the first time, we're going to undergo a lot of challenges. Amongst other things, you say, if I make laws in an ordinary time, I give you time to comment, come back to me, and whatever. But what do I do in a time of a crisis where I need to act quickly? You may not get sufficient time to comment on the law that I'm about to make. But does that mean that you will not be able to follow the law? So all I'm saying is that there are changes when you do things around crisis.
Yes.
It cannot be business as usual when there is a crisis.
Definitely, yes. So this crisis, as we have just unpacked it now, not only does it affect government or the public sector per se, it affects the other three pillars of society. And it's my firm belief that if you are going to move forward as a society, you need to balance out and create bridges between the other three pillars that I'm going to talk about just now. Apart from the public sector pillar, which includes government and government agencies and state-owned companies, you have the pillar of the private sector. And inside the private sector, it's privately owned businesses, it's people in their own personal capacity, and all sorts of other formations like employers formations, business leadership formations. All of these people sit there, and they need to respond, anticipate, and lead their businesses, and not run them down to ground simply because there is a crisis that we are facing. Yes. We also have the non-profit sector. The non-profit sector has also got the NGOs, which are more of an addition to the bridge that needs to be created between the private sector and government. So these NGOs, they close the gaps. They play an advocacy role. They do things that are actually putting government on its toes so that it does not trample on human rights simply because there is a disaster. Then you have the fourth pillar, which is not that well developed in South Africa, but you find that in other countries, it is well developed. That is now the cooperative sector. So in countries like Kenya and other countries outside our continent, and even within the continent of Africa, the cooperative sector is well developed, insofar that you even have the financial services sector playing a role there, where you have got cooperative banks, much more developed than we are in South Africa, which play through putting them up together under the banner of common interest. They are able to, for example, have lawyers have their own bank, or medical professionals have their own bank, and actually finance across for capital requirements, and even simple things like financing vehicles and financing bonds. So that kind of a cooperative sector also has a role to play under this crisis. So I'm just laying a foundation to say, today, what we are going to talk about is mainly to focus on government. And under the banner of government, we're going to look at communication. And recently, the most recent form of communication, the major that is when the president spoke about the likelihood of moving down from, I don't know whether it's up or down, it depends how you look at it. Moving down from level 4 to level 3 kind of lockdown, with certain relaxations happening. And the kind of feedback right across society to that kind of an address was of utter discontent. People are not happy. They say there was not enough clarity or information with regard to what the president said. What would you like to say with regard to just that part as we delve into government communication?
Yeah, so again, for me, what is the foundation of the government? So for me, it's critical to understand that the powers that are exercised by government are on behalf of the public. So yes, literally, whatever powers that are exercised by them, they are supposed to be for the benefit of the public interest. So for me, that is the foundation. And the Constitution as well, it's clear that, government needs to be transparent. So in the issues that are surrounding government and communication, government should always seek to be transparent and as intentional as possible. Yes. So around the issue of the message that the president gave and ambiguity that is alleged thereof. Yes. It is my view then that it will be great to unpack on how government could actually communicate, seeing that they've got, Cyril has a spokesperson, or let me say a communications manager. So yes, around that, what is it that government could utilize to actually communicate more effectively and with an intention?
Yes, yes. Because what has happened, even from the first announcement that the father of the nation wants to call a family meeting, so to speak, as many people refer to this, yes, there was no real explanation as to what to expect without dealing with the content.
Yes.
And I think in law, you have got some funny kind of submissions that you make before you appear before the court. And you call them heads of argument.
That's right.
So those heads of argument, usually, they give a taste of what is at stake here before you actually walk into the courtroom.
That's right.
So how could we create, what would you suggest that the government communications people, this is now not the politicians, but the employed, like the civil servants that are working in the presidents, what could they do to give us a taste of and sort of create a scope for the president's communication so that the kind of confusion that happened a few days ago doesn't happen? How could they actually overcome this? First
of all, we need to compliment the president for being the most humane and accessible president. We are lucky to have someone who's always willing to come out and address us. That's the first compliment. And in view of that, and with the fact that he's a warm person, government staff or government support staff should be able to look up to him and say, okay, we've got a kind of a president that is warm and likes to interface, talk to people. So how can we support him so that whenever he is engaging, people are not confused or people are not complaining? My view is that team that's sitting with the president, then they should be looking at the content. What is the content that the president is going to deliver? What are the risks that are associated with miscommunication or agreements that have been made in principle to say we agree in principle that this is what is going to be communicated, but who is going to communicate it is very critical. Whilst you agree that today I'm going to say we're going to start serving tea, but is it my business to say it? Am I the right candidate to say it? Or I'm going to delegate that to the minister of the kitchen to say that we're going to allow tea. So those are the things that I think they can support the president with. And then in terms of the spokesperson for the office of the presidency, I think she could be the one who goes out there to be the buffer, to say that this is what the president is going to address. You know, this is the intention. Mostly people want to know what is the intention. Because you want to manage expectations. Everyone currently is anxious. So if expectations are not managed, we're going to come to wrong conclusions that there was nothing that was actually said.
We don't want him to be the father or the uncle that calls a family meeting and we don't know what it's about.
That's right.
Exactly. So it's not about the content, it's about the intention.
Yes.
Yes. And they are about, probably, to simplify, I know I'm oversimplifying it. There are probably 3 levels of communication that sit, whether you are in government or in the private sector, in whatever form of organization, there's strategic communication. That usually, if we're to use aviation, is flying at 33,000 feet. There is not much detail there.